So, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Philipp. This is the first time I present at a Perl conference, so thanks for still showing up, even though I'm in Munich. I work in Vienna for the Austrian press agency. We develop a large system there that is the basis of our company's business. So we have like 200,000 to 300,000 lines of code that are running there 24/7, and so they produce a ton of log files, of course, as your system do as well. I might turn off my email, sorry. So we are always interested in better handling our log files so that we know what our system is doing and how to improve on that. And I'm sure you will have this need as well, otherwise you wouldn't be here right now. So if you want the slides, you will find them on tinyurl.com/log structured with dashes, just in case you need it. So, as a motivation, who knows her? Hands up. Yeah, we do have a few Fraggles fans, that's great. Do you know how she's called? What's her name? That's Marjorie. It's Marjorie the trash heap. And Marjorie is great because everything gets dumped onto her, and so she knows everything. So she is the oracle of the Fraggles world, and whenever the Fraggles don't know what to do, they go to the trash heap and they ask her what to do. So this reminds me a bit of our log files, because also into our log files everything gets dumped, and we can't ask them questions, we have to dig in the trash ourselves, so this is a bit disappointing to me. I would like to ask the trash heap and not dig around there myself. So I think instead of having such a trash heap, I would prefer, I don't know about your girlfriends, your wives, your husbands, your partners. Normally you can throw all your ideas, your thoughts, your scattered ramblings, you can just throw them onto your partner and they will just remind them. And you can go there 3 days later and ask them, what did I tell you 3 days ago? Where did I leave the keys? What did we do then? And they will know. And so this is how I would like my log files to work, instead of wrapping and awking and stuff like that. So that's what I'd like to talk about today. What do we need for that? What we do normally have at the moment is we have the what happened information. This is what you print into your log files right now. You have this connection refused and this couldn't open file, and this is the what happened of your information. But there are other things that are missing right now. For me, I think this is some kind of structured information, because what you do is you write a text file, but computers are not good at interpreting text that is written for humans. You might know that when you use Siri or something like that, they can't figure out what a piece of text means. So we need to help them a bit and give them structured information like key-value pairs and stuff like that. Then computers can figure better out what we mean. And we can give them some context information, because in addition to what the code is doing right there, there is also a lot of other information around, like what was the program doing in the large picture? Was it processing a request? Was it working as a cron job? Stuff like that. And this is all information that would be interesting and that I would like to learn later when I look into my log files again. So we need to enrich our log line with additional information, and of course we need some kind of data store, because we want to have something where you can ask questions at, so not just a plain log file. And of course we need some infrastructure, because developers always love to build infrastructure, so we have to build some infrastructure. So let's see what we can do for us. Let's start with the left part, with the how we log. Who uses logany? Who in this room uses logany? Yeah, okay, it's fine. It's like 50%, I guess, 40%. Okay, this shouldn't be surprising now that logany is in the title of this presentation. So for the other ones who don't use it and who probably ask themselves, why should I use a logging framework? All I have to do is I have to print to standard out to standard error and I'm done. Why should I use some software for that? To me, the reason is that using logany or something comparable, you can separate the production of the log files with the consumption. So at the point where you write your log information, you don't have to decide where it will end up to. And this is important because as long as you write without that framework, you will always only have one target where the log output ends up in. And this is hard-coded in your code. Whereas if you can separate it, then you suddenly have the possibility to write into many different places. And this comes in handy once you start to think about it. So we had a workshop in my team, and we thought about if we could freely choose where our log output should end up, what would we do? And we ended up with an awful whiteboard of X's and details and columns with different locations and lines with different contexts. Because it's not so easy. When you start to think about it in the long run, you see that where you want your log files really depends on the context. If you are in an interactive mode, you want your output on standard out, basically. But you definitely don't want your output on standard out if you're a CGI script, because then it will end up at the user. If you're in a cron job, you might want your output in a log file and want the name of the log file mailed to the person who runs the system. So you have many different, in unit tests you want to have completely different behavior. You might want to have completely different behavior. So once you thought about it for 2 hours in your team, you realize, oh my God, I have to do a lot of configuration. Especially if you would use a log middleware where you have to write XML files, because you don't want to write XML files for all of that. Instead, what you would love to do is you would love to write some code that decides for you, depending on the situation your code is in, where should my output end up. And the good thing is that with login, you can do that. You can just write some package, let's call it myLogging, and you can start to guess or to detect the context you're in. You can check, am I in a CGI script? Am I a cron job? Am I in a test, in a Docker environment? All of that. And once you know that, you can then, in a few lines of code, set up your logany adapter accordingly, so that your log output ends up where it should end up in this specific context.
You should not do that.
Okay, you'll tell me afterwards.
Yeah.
So, and after that, you just export your logany handler, and when you've done that, you just have to write one line of code in all of your Perl scripts, and from that moment on, they will log exactly the way you designed it on your whiteboard. So you have really little impact in your code. You just say, use myLogging in your Perl scripts, and in your Perl modules, you don't have to do anything that's surprising. You just use logany as you would always would. And now all your logging just works as you designed it to be. So with this bit of code, suddenly your chaos becomes into some kind of structure and order when we look at the code. So now that we have this, we can now begin to add infrastructure to our log lines, because now we can say, in addition to the standard output or wherever your logging goes to, I would like to add a new target, and this could be ElasticSearch. It could be some other database as well, but if you choose ElasticSearch, the nice thing is, besides it's open source, which is lovely, that it has a full text search engine, and it has, as they call it, faceted search, which is a fancy way to say that it builds categories automatically and tries to make clever stuff. So I say document database. You might wonder what has a log line to do with a document. It doesn't sound similar. So I'll show you an example of how I would like my document to look like. This is just a made-up example of a database error that happens in a web application. So the user tried to add some stuff to the cart, and then the database faulted. So I would like, in order to have an easy live debugging, I would like to have this information available when I look at it a few days later. Of course, I want to know the message. So this is what we have right now, database update failed. But then I want to have things like, this is what would normally be part of the stack trace if you're language supports stack traces, so I want to know the class, the method, the attributes, the parameters. But I might also want to have some state of the application right now. That's what's in the card. That's not part of the call stack probably, but that's important information. But I would also like to have some information that is not part of the database stuff at all. So I might want to have the IP address of the client. I might want to know what is his browser, is he using a mobile phone, what is in his session and stuff like that. So this might all prove to be useful. But how do we get that there? Right now we only have log-info, and I don't want to put all this manually into Elasticsearch. So we need some kind of infrastructure to add all of this to this upper level message. And this is what we'll try to do next. First, let's see how your code looks like right now. I guess this is how your code looks like. Use database handler execute or die. This is what we all do. And if we're really motivated, we add the error string of the database handler. This is already extra work normally. So this is where we start from. Now let's try to improve it. The first thing to do is instead of just say die string, you say die log error string. This doesn't change the program because it still dies, but before it dies, the log any stack has the opportunity to do something and to maybe write something to a database.
Whether you write die log fatal.
Okay, fine.
Well, you want to die.
Mm-hmm.
Fatal error.
Fine, yeah, you can do this as well, but you can do, yeah.
That's for categorizing. When you configure your login, then it's the difference between error, you can ignore an error, you can continue after an error, you can't continue after that.
Okay, so we have fatal as well, I just learned. But what you can do now is instead of writing all the context information into your string, interpolating it into your string, what you can also do with log any is give a hash as a second parameter. So in addition to giving the text, you can now also give a hash, and you put all the information that you like to have in your log file later on as a second parameter. So now the first string no longer gets interpolated, which is great for indexing and stuff. And all the information that you have right here at hand, you just add on to this log line. Now we have a lot more information. If you think about the document that we wanted to have, you by now have maybe the upper half of the document. But it's still not enough, because I also want to have the IP address and whether it's a mobile browser and stuff like that. And you don't want to add this to this call because this is some database code, and you don't want to have IP addresses in your database model, I guess. So we need something in addition, and this is context data. So I added to the log any global object a hash called context, a hash ref called context, and you can add key value pairs onto that context hash. And you can even, as it's Perl, you can even localize this. And whatever you add to this context hash will be printed together with your log line, whenever logging will be called in this context. This is awesome because you can now write something like this. If you don't know pluck, just ignore what the code does. But the important thing is that somewhere in your code, you can now add information that will be printed into any log line as long as this stack is active and will be removed by the time we return. So now for any log line that will be printed within this request, you now will know what was part of the session, what was part of what was the client ID, and stuff like that. So now, with just a few extra lines, we made our one-line log string into all this bit of information. Now we have the text, we have the hash with the local information, and we have the hash with the context. Isn't that cool? So the only thing that's left is that we have to write it to Elasticsearch. I'll keep that as an exercise to you, just so that you have an idea of what you need to do. All you have to do now is you inherit from the log any adapter base, and you have to implement one method which is called structured. And this method structured now gets 2 arguments and then an array, which is the string and 1 or 2 hashes. And so if you want to write it to Elasticsearch, what you could do here is just build a JSON and send it to the database or log it somewhere to be sent to the database. So I think we have all the parts in place to get every log line into an Elasticsearch. I have, I think, 2 or 3 more minutes. This should be sufficient for some live demo. I'll give it a try at least. So next slide. Should have the link. So I won't go into much detail. This is just if you've never seen Elasticsearch and Kibana, so that you have an idea what we're talking about. So this is from our company's live production, the log files. And what I can do now is I now have full text search, so I can just enter queries here. But I also have all these kind of charts, and I can dig into details here. I can just zoom into some timeframes and all the graphs update. And I can filter. For instance, I can say I'm only interested in the special combination. So I only want errors of a specific transmission type in combination with, okay, this was an unlucky one, with different other options, and find all my log info then down there. So no information gets lost. But I have a lot more information now that will help me to debug that stuff. I think that's enough for the demo right now. If you're interested in that, take a look at the Kibana website. I'll also skip the next 2 slides, just mentioning the headlines, which is you can, or some question that might come up is, what do I do with all this Perl code that doesn't use logany? And the answer is, there's an answer for that. And you can. And the second question might be what to do with the output of non-Perl executables that you might launch within your program. And the answer is, there's an answer for that. So you can look it up in the slides. If this means something to you, so if you start to get interested in this topic, there are 5 things that I would recommend you to read right now, or after this talk. Which is, the first one is maybe the most important, is Tim Bunce made a really interesting 1-hour talk when he was in Salzburg, I think 3 years ago. This was called Application Logging in the 21st Century. This is on YouTube, so you should, before you start doing anything with logging, you should take a look at that. And then there are 4 blog posts from the initial idea and discussion with the logany people up to the release of the trial version of logany that hit CPAN, I think, last week, and that contains all my patches that you've seen here. So you can now do the context hash, you can now do the structured logging adapters and stuff like that. Which comes to the last question, what are you supposed to do now? If you use logany, you should upgrade. You should please upgrade to this trial version and give us feedback. If you have your notebooks ready, do it right now, I'll wait. No, I won't wait. But it would be awesome if you give it a test drive. Secondly, of course, start to use logany in your code. And once you did that, start using the second parameter hash. This is fully backwards compatible, so if your infrastructure doesn't know about it, it would just give you a plain data dumper string, so you won't lose by that at all. Thirdly is write your first logany adapter. It's easy, as you've seen. And then start to import your logs to an Elasticsearch and have fun digging through the heap. Thank you very much for the attention. Philipp and I'm ready for questions either now or afterwards at the bar. Thank you. Are we fine with question QA round?
Yeah, it's time, but you can do.
Okay.
It's a quick one. It's kind of relevant. So, first of all, and it's 2 questions, but they're very closely related. Is the API for the various logging methods now officially that there was a string and then structured data? Where previously I think it was only a string, maybe a list of strings. Mm-hmm. And in a related note, where does that fit into the startf functions?
Mm-hmm. So question 1, is the API fixed? I think the answer is yes by now. Of course, the decision is up to the login adapters, the developers, but from how they responded to the patches and the fact that they are already released them, I think yes, they are. This is stable by now, and the F functions, so the one that will get interpolated, are not affected by this at all. So they will still produce everything in one string, but afterwards your context will be added at the end of that string. So also this is backwards compatible, but you can't use the hash in addition with the F functions. But this might be something that could be added if need arises. Thank you.